So sometimes you have to comfort the afflicted, and sometimes you have to afflict the comforted, and that's probably a t-shirt for us.
What we teach is being trustworthy.
People open their souls to us.
We've got clients that have been with us literally 20 years.
You're doing what you're meant to do. You're doing what you're put on this earth to do.
My children's lives are forever impacted because of a choice he made 30-some-odd years ago to start this firm.
My goal was and is to have each of us in the past, each in the future, be the most valuable employee the company has, highest valued employee. I'm very, very clear that the differences we make help people personally and professionally, help their companies grow, help them grow, and that's the difference we want to make. Our legacy is excellence. I believe in overkill. If you can't answer the questions, people don't know enough to ask, you're not prepared. Sometimes it's like shooting a mosquito with a cannon. On the other hand, it's who we are.
In December of 2016, the principals of Spencer, Shank, Capers & Associates came together for their annual Christmas offsite. This year was unlike any other year. This year was not just about coming together to celebrate another successful year. This year was steeped in reconnection and forgiveness. This year, the past comes together with the present, and all who have made this firm great come together once again to preserve the legacy and sharpen the saw.
We had started speaking about legacy 10 years ago, the legacy of the firm. And from that came what we call the SSCA way. And as we hired new people, it became really apparent that they didn't know. They didn't know the history of the firm, and they had never had the benefit of meeting some of those really incredible people who helped build SSCA, who were part of the legacy. What better way was there to illustrate who these people are and what they stood for than to have them on film?
The firm probably started 42 or 43 years ago, and we incorporated on January 12th. So I ended up starting the firm, and my wife was very, very supportive. Turns out she was a flight attendant at the time, so we both worked. We lived in the least expensive house west of Sepulveda in Manhattan Beach at the time. As a matter of fact, our realtor had to take her commission as our second, so we could afford to get in it. My office was in the garage, which was detached garage. I built a set of sliding doors to hide the fact I had a typewriter and files in there. I had a part-time secretary named Ann who came in. We had some ups and downs. There were times we weren't sure if we were going to make it, but that happens, I think, in every business.
End of college, university, I had no clue what to do with my life, and it was also during the Vietnam era. So it was during the period of time when you had to go to the Army. I avoided the draft by joining the Army Reserve, and so I did that. When I returned, I think the question really is, did I want to work? And the answer is no. So I was a very immature 21-year-old, 22-year-old, 23-year-old. Got a job at Wells Fargo Bank, and for 2 years, and then I went to European American Bank for 7, so that was 9 years as a banker. And I can say categorically that I hated banking and banking hated me. Where the story goes is I became very depressed. And at that time, I found Kit, my wife. And, oh gosh, about 5 years in to that 9-year banking career, she said, let's go back and get our MBA. And I took a class in organizational behavior. And about the fourth class, I came up to Dr. Len Korat, who was teaching the class, and I said, Dr. Len, I don't know what you do, but whatever you do, I can do. What do you do? That night, he said, Tom, I've noticed you have a skill in facilitating.
I did not want to be an employer. My models were one-person consulting firms. I met Tom when we were getting an MBA. Tom said, Brad, I want to do what you do. I want to work with you. I did not know how to use Tom Shank.
What we did was, I found out one night I liked Brad, and I especially liked his girlfriend, Connie. And so Connie and Kit hit it off, and the four of us became friends. At that time, I had no thought of or idea that I would go to work with Brad. And it was only after that. So we were friends first by far.
I wish we had this napkin. He came, we were discussing what was going to happen, how he was going to hire him, et cetera. We actually, it wasn't a dumb deal. I lived on 30th Street, Manhattan Beach, played Frisbee golf, which we used to play a lot, all the way down to a brand new restaurant in Manhattan Beach called Poncho's. It's still there, by the way.
One day we were down at Poncho's, just having a margarita that turned into a couple margaritas. And on the back of a napkin, he goes, well, he said, I always thought I'd be a Lone Ranger, but if you want a job, I can't pay you. I was making $33,000 at the bank. And Brad could afford to pay me $1,000 a month. He said, I'll guarantee you work for 1 year.
One day I was in my office, I get a call from Vast Corporation, one of my first clients, and the officer said, is Tom there? No, this is Brad. Yeah, but is Tom there? Huh? This is Brad. You want to talk to me, right? No, I want to talk to Tom. And the way Tom got business, he took it away from me. Seriously, because I've always been more of a rainmaker. I bring people in, I bring the business in for the most part, turn it over to Tom, and we never lose business. Because Tom is so good with people. And by the first year I gave a bonus, I gave him a $1,000 bonus in the $1 bills in a little suitcase, a little briefcase. Tom said, it changed my life, changed the firm's life.
I would never have been able to sharpen a saw. I would never have been able to understand that my gift was facilitating people if it hadn't been for Brad bringing in business.
When you come into this firm, the experience that this group has, I thought I was relatively good when I came into the firm, and I quickly realized that I had so much to learn. It provides sort of an internal sense of calm and permission to recognize that there's growth that you all had to go through it as well. You weren't hatched this way.
Tom's great strength is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comforted. Now, having said that, that's going to show up in his coaching. It also shows up in the training room, where you see probably one of the most intentional people in our firm.
If I'm sitting in front of a group, out of nowhere I say, I want to invite you to my funeral. Will you remember me? They'll never forget that I asked that question. So at that moment, I was different. That's a very cool thing for people to think about. So as we coach people, we're coaching them to be different. My purpose in life is to awake the walking dead. And that's memorable. Now, it can sound pretty arrogant, but to awake the walking dead is just to take people from living on autopilot and to live consciously about life.
My alter ego is a guy who sits in the middle of a boat flowing down a river in western Alaska on wilderness expeditions. I've done that for 35 years. That sense of exploration, that sense of adventure came back to me, or came back with me as I was a consultant. Those years of being on the river shaped who I am here, and I think that made me different.
Tom Coble joined the firm in 1989. His unique gift is he fills up a room with his enormous presence and the absence of ego. And all he wants is to help.
Initially coming in, there was, oh gosh, I have to be like Brad, or I have to be like Tom, or I have to be like Hedges. When I came to the understanding, one, I can't be them. I came to the realization also that it wasn't necessary. I needed to be me. So I would challenge anybody coming into the firm to really come in being who they are, absorbing everything they possibly can from everybody else, but being authentic and being who they are, because that's why they were brought in.
I was staring at this lady. She was just a little past, but she was moving like it mattered because she knew it wouldn't last. I retired from the music industry having done everything I ever dreamed about doing in life. Everything I ever wanted to do, I did. And I couldn't quite be sure of why I was still alive, because I'm done. And I sort of wandered around for a couple of years sort of saying, I think the Jonathan Livingston Seagull quote is, if you're wondering whether or not your purpose on earth is through or not, look around. If you're here, you're not done.
I just joined the firm in January of 1990, right before I did. His unique gift is to be able to be 100% present and have such keen insight in an instant. It's remarkable.
And first day on the job, January 1st, 1990, John Bishop asked for me to be the consultant that he had for his organization. He was going to speak to his whole organization. So I sat with John before the meeting, and I said to him, John, just before things start here, I want you to know I know nothing about business whatsoever. I know nothing about business. I'm a business consultant. I know nothing about business. And John said, Hedges, I know everything I need to know about business. I'm asking you here to be here to do what you do. And I said, are you sure? And he said, absolutely. He said, I want to be better, so do whatever you do. And so John addressed the organization, and in the middle of it, a guy raised his hand, and John called on him, and he asked a question. And John thought the question was sort of inane and not relevant, and he just sort of blew by it. And I realized, whoa, that doesn't work. And I got up and I walked over and I went behind the guy and I went, and the room just got dead silence. And John looked at me like, who the fuck, what are you doing? And I said, that's okay, John, don't worry, he won't open his mouth again. And he started to be angry, and his response was pretty typical and natural. And I said, and he said, what? And I said, he asked a question. Not because he wants to piss you off, but something's wrong, and you're not listening. And bless his heart, he took a big breath and kind of gathered himself together, and he said, will you please repeat the question?
I've got a big personality with a lot of energy and a lot of compassion and a lot of creativity that has served me incredibly well. And there is a uniqueness about my energy and the way I engage in the world that brings to my practice and brings to the firm. It makes me different.
Dan joined the firm in December of 1999. Daniel has the ability to completely energize a room and brings with him the incredible talent for being able to be a catalyst for any meaningful conversation.
Brad said, fly down here and we'll have a car meet you. So I flew to LAX and I had a limo meet me You're walking down, coming down the baggage claim, and there's your name with this limousine driver, Mr. Collette, and he greets me and says, "Welcome to LA, I'll get your bags." I go out, there's a full stretch limo, I go in the back, there's fruit, there's drinks. I'm going, this is Los Angeles. This is LA. This is the best thing ever. We drive up to Pasadena. We arrive at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. We drive up. The valet guy opens the door and he calls me by name. "Oh, Mr. Collette, we've been waiting for you." Like, this is like a movie. This is great. They said, we have a golf cart. We'll shuttle you down to the casita where your party is intact. So I get in this little golf cart and we go down this beautiful casita and I go in and here are all my partners. And there's this huge warm welcome. I've known them all, I've worked with them, but now my first day of being a part of that. And so here we are staying at this fabulous hotel, having fabulous dinners, talking about wonderful stuff we're doing. It was just like, I could not have dropped into a better nirvana in my life. I could hardly believe here I am, being accepted by this firm.
When Chris Henry joined the firm, he changed the dialogue. And he gave us a new C that allowed us to respect people differently.
I knew that I was going to come out for this event this weekend is because of what everybody in the firm has meant to me. And there's just a special connection that everybody has. It truly is like a family. And we still keep in close contact, even though I've been gone from the firm for, 10 or 11 years. And the legacy they've left on me and hopefully, others in my tree is going to be, phenomenal.
I heard people say, "Stephanie, you have horsepower." And I said, "Well, what does that mean?" And horsepower means you just have the desire and the drive. And I didn't know that was unique for me because I was raised that way. I was born in Vietnam and I came here when I was 4. My parents were captured 4 times and put in jail and lost everything. And they would start over to buy another seat on a boat where they don't know where it's going to land for my freedom and my future and my brother's future. So I grew up watching them never fail. Like you can't fail. You just put your heart and soul into everything you do and you get it done. So for me, when I am determined to do something, it will be done.
Stephanie joined the firm in September of 2012. And Stephanie is really unique in her moxie. She has strength and she has courage and she does not back down. She's tenacious in what she believes in.
I'm the youngest in the firm still. So my nickname in the firm is Kiddo. Everybody calls me Kiddo. So I'm hoping that is my nickname until I'm 70. That would be really cool. Right. We all, every single one of us, have a part of us that doubts ourselves. We're our worst critic. And for me, I know I'm a courageous person, but the reason why I have the courage is because I have the passion. And I really want to help people. And from that space, from the passion, I'm able to channel the courage. Because are you kidding me? Like, I'm walking in with a group of really wise people, really competent in what they do. There was a lot of self-doubt there, but I couldn't focus on that. And I think it's because when I have the passion, forget all that. That doesn't matter anymore. And then the courage comes out. That's where I had a seat at the table.
So I'm reading from Too Soon Old, Too Late Smart by Gordon Livingston. It's a book that was introduced to our firm by Susan. Tom's a massive advocate of it, and there's just countless amounts of wisdom in it. So the line that resonates so deeply with me: happiness is not simply the absence of despair. It's an affirmative state in which our lives have both meaning and pleasure. Resonant for me, I think that so much of what we do, like we've talked about, people think is about getting yourself out of pain. And that's half of the journey. And how do we find that opportunity to really get to that other side of it? Tons of joy, tons of excitement, tons of pleasure. So it's really resonant for me.
Sean joined us late January of 2015. Sean brought relevance. When Sean's in a room, he's in the room. and he brings considerable depth to every single thing he does.
In those first few days, I certainly felt ill-prepared. I went to client meetings with Tom or with Brad, and I realized their capacity to react and respond to situation and scenario. And then I would hear one of them speak eloquently, articulately, pointed, very direct. I realized that, man, I don't have that skill in me. Did they think I have that skill? I got to figure out how to do that. And one of my first client calls, I'm tap dancing through telling him he needs to stop making excuses. So I'm on a call with him, and he says he hadn't done something because he's busy. And I said, no, I get it. Yeah, I mean, we're all busy. And so I was trying to lead him down a path, and I said, so do you think you'll be less busy next week? No. I said, how about next month? No. And I said, so next year, you're going to be less busy. And he goes, are you telling me to stop making excuses? And I said, if you need it that directly, yes. And he said, I need it that directly. And so I said, then quit making excuses. And it was the beginning learning for me. I don't know if it was the beginning, but it was certainly a punctuated learning for me on my need to hold up a mirror really directly for folks because they needed to hear it that way. So I definitely felt in those early stages ill-equipped. And then that evolved. I became a little more comfortable in my own skin, got a little bit better, watched this group, and started getting a little better at it. But yeah, definitely, it felt a little weird in the beginning.
Whenever Brad groans a little bit about me being a pain in the neck, usually about a standard, I remind him that he was the person who taught me how to set goals through that program. And so I've been really a part of this firm my entire adult life.
Susan is, I think she worked harder in the firm than anybody else. Self-imposed standards of excellence. And she just didn't lower the bar.
Being a woman in an all-male firm, and really an all-male industry. And my first client, I will not name his name, but he dressed in a purple suit and drove a purple car, and he was my first retainer. And what I learned was that Brad pimped me out my first 2 years in order to pay for my nut, because I would literally show up to this meeting for lunch every Friday with this client, and he did not care what I had to say. I would try to write goals or prepare myself. I was completely incompetent in those days, and he didn't care because he just wanted me to go to lunch with him every Friday.
In an ideal world, the contents of these bottles would be filled with the actual liquid sauce.
Oh my gosh.
We did at least want to let you hold it in your hand as if you had some. So
Larry was leaving the firm right when I was joining.
Your exits, am I right?
He's the wealth of all information as it relates to our field. And if there was one word for him, I would say he's the vault.
And in front of me is Leonard Nimoy getting out of his car. So I looked at him and I said,
This is so good.
Art, did you go to East Heatley High School in Irondequoit? He laughs just like that. He says, yeah. I said, and you lived in Irondequoit, right? He said, yeah. I said, wait a minute. Aren't you Lenny Nimoy? Lenny. Aren't you Lenny Nimoy? So he laughs. I said, what have you been doing with yourself?
That's so hilarious.
Larry became very ill during the offsite and had to leave prematurely.
They said, Bill, they're buying lipstick. He looked at me and said, shit, Spencer, I thought you were smarter than that. I mean, I get these Harvard MBAs, they make sure that the color lipstick's exactly right on the printed ad. It doesn't matter, by the way, Brad. Make sure the scratch tips ad smell the way it's supposed to smell. I said, it doesn't matter, Brad. So, okay, Bill, I'll buy it. What are you selling? He said, not what I'm selling. It's what they're buying. When a woman's buying cosmetics, what she's buying is hope. Hopes to get a better husband, hope her husband loved her for a change, or her boyfriend's going to pay attention to her. And I know how to communicate that.
My consulting model was a company called McBurr, founded by David McClelland. When I was at Mattel, I got to know them and I worked with them. They sent me a bill every month. And in the bill, there was something called 17% G&A. Well, I questioned, what is this? What they call general administrative. It covers the fact that we don't charge for copies, secretarial expense, et cetera. So I started, when I went to business, I didn't know any better. I charged 70% G&A. So I had a client that was billing 1 day a month at $1,000 a day. And there was much more work to do that month, so we agreed I was going to bill him for 3 days, so $3,000 that month. A big amount of money for me, by the way. And so I took him out for lunch. Let's say lunch cost $20. I bought lunch, so it's $20 bill. So it's $3,020, and I charged 70% G&A. I was in my office, picked up the phone. Brad, what is this? I thought he was talking about the additional $2,000. I started explaining, no, what's this 70% G&A? I explained it. He said, Brad, I've seen your office in your garage. You don't have any expenses. What are you doing? Don't charge it to me. Don't charge it to anyone else ever. And I haven't.
If you think 38 years, right, that's I don't know what percent of partnerships make it, what percent don't make it. So we learned very early on to not make money the issue. So all we had then to do was get past working styles. And Brad had working up down to 8 days a week. And I coached Little League Baseball. So I would disappear for a while and Brad would wonder where I am, and it would cause great tension, and I would avoid him because he's very controlling. Dr. Len Corad, when I asked him, I said, do you think I ought to go into business with Brad? He said, no. He said, I said, why not? And he said, because one, he has a high need to control, and you have a high need not to be controlled. So that's not going to work. And the second is that he's a serial extrovert and you're a serial introvert. And that's going to be a serious energy drain on your part and frustration for him on his part. So both those pieces of data were invaluable when I discussed it with Brad. We were heat-seeking missiles towards using our God-given gifts. So why let a little tension be the reason not to be together?
The most difficult thing was knowing I had responsibilities beyond today. They gave me a day timer, and I had shit I had to do next month, next year, and that's like, oh God, for my wiring, that is so, I survived by not looking ahead.
I was given this enormous achievement drive, and we laugh in the firm. It's not always really funny about my tongue out profile. So very high need for achievement, very high need for affiliation, very high need for power. Also, being a perfectionist as a person, it created competition. And that was oftentimes fueled in ways that I regret now, in terms of, wanting to be the best or wanting to be the smartest. And that's part of the growth that people don't really understand about themselves. It's the stuff that tangles people up, that creates sometimes tension in relationships, where the competition is being placed in the wrong places. That was my early learning, but it's taken probably 25 years to start to really unlock that. And in doing that, it's helped me grow, but more importantly, it's helping me help others grow. I'm grateful for that.
I was put into a role that they had 2 previous people fill that were not successful. And I'd heard the stories about how these previous people had failed so miserably at managing this training division, and they'd all left. So I obviously had some apprehensions of saying, well, what am I going to be able to do different? I'm going to fast forward about 18 months into the firm. I really hit a roadblock, and I thought, I'm not being successful at this job. So I was feeling like I shouldn't stay, because I'm not a consultant, I'm not training. That's my forte, is stand-up delivery. So we were at an offsite at Brad's house, and I got emotional. I was tearing up because I had felt like I had let the firm down, I'd let myself down. And I said, I think I've made the wrong decision. I think I need to move on. because we're not structured for what you're wanting me to do, and it's too frustrating for me not to feel successful. Right at that moment, my partner, Tom Shank, he looks over at me as he kind of interrupts this, and he does just this. You got to catch it. He stops and he says, "Dano, we got this." That's all he did. "Dano, we got this. Hang on." That wink, that attention brought me back that fast. And it started the whole conversation differently. My other partner, Hedges Capers, he immediately came over to me and says, "Dan, I had no idea you were in such discomfort. And I'm embarrassed. I have not been more attentive to you because I don't want you to leave." Brad was magnificent. "Dan, we never felt like you have been failing us, ever." You know, those moments, again, by my personality type and who I was an amazing, endearing moment that here I was ready to walk out. And this attention to me was, we got this. We don't just walk you out the door. And I remember flying home that night saying, I'm committed to this firm. I'm staying in this firm.
During the 5 years, it's a constant struggle. It still is a struggle. I moved back to LA because I joined the firm and I really wanted to be close to my mentors. Before that, I was in Guam and my commute was 5 minutes to work. So coming in as a consultant, I did not anticipate the traffic in downtown LA. So the job in itself was overwhelming, and just trying to figure things out as far as where I was going was overwhelming. And I remember Tom had me join him with a client in downtown LA. And so being me, I don't want to be late. And so I plan ahead and I think, well, you know, I'm coming from Irvine, 2 hours would be plenty of time to get there in downtown LA, where there's one way, you know, traffic and streets. And so I'm driving and looking at the clock and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I might be late. And my heart just drops because that's like one of the worst things for me is to show up late. I don't want to disappoint Tom or embarrass him by any means. And I get lost. I was overwhelmed just with the newness of it all. And I remember getting there before Tom, and Tom doesn't know this part, but I go into the restroom and I break down and I call my husband and I'm like, I'm so overwhelmed. Not only am I overwhelmed with the job, but I get lost, there's traffic, I didn't plan for this, and I'm crying in the bathroom. We all struggle somehow. We all are just finding our way in life, and we all are chasing one thing, is happiness. It's just sometimes our definition of happiness is different, yet we're all chasing that and looking for that.
I also struggled with something that I'm sure anybody in the firm would tell you this one. The core of this firm, the people in this firm, the models that we have, they're phenomenal. And when I walked in with a different set of eyes, I felt like it needed an update, a bit of a refresh. And we could sort of put a little bit more of a youthful feel into it so that we attracted to a millennial population. And I walked in guns blazing and said, hey, let's change all this stuff. And I had this marketing firm come in and we spent way too much money on having them figure it all out. And it's like, awesome. And we presented this huge thing and everybody said, no. I underestimated the admiration for the legacy of this firm, for the deeply entrenched values and standards that were part of this firm, that had begun, as Susan said to me, in the living room of Brad's house 35 years ago. And I came in thinking of it much more transactional around how we should change some things. And I wasn't paying appropriate homage to the history. Time helped me see that differently. And so we are evolving. We are changing things. That's a reality. It's necessary in the marketplace. We have to maintain relevancy. And I'm trying to be a much greater guardian of standards and legacy and those things that are important to our firm, so that recognizing those things that made us great continue to be a critical part of what we do.
I most appreciated about doing PCM was it was the opportunity to see people. Yeah. And that I don't think there's anything more extraordinary than being seen.
And this is not a job. This is really not a job. This is a calling. It really is. If you get a call at 3 o'clock in the morning from someone who's in pain, you've helped them, don't say, my gosh, they woke me up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Say, my gosh, I'm so happy they knew to call me. They felt comfortable calling me. It's happened to me, as Connie can tell you, several times. And instead of being upset about it, I'm happy because people have pain. People who run major companies have pain. People don't think about it that way. They think, my gosh, they're head of $1 billion company, everything must be great. Turns out, everything's not great. And they need someone to talk to, someone who can bounce them off and help them understand what they're doing, how to approach it differently, how to rethink things. Much of what I do, much of what we do, is 10x more effective if you do it in person. You got to be willing to get on an airplane. It's not a sacrifice, it's a trade-off.
If you have a seat at the table in this firm, you can't view it as a job. It wouldn't be. And we would see it in you. Clients would know it from you, that it would feel like a calling. You're doing what you're meant to do. You're doing what you're put on this earth to do, using your strengths.
This job has to capture you. You have to feel that calling. And we've watched others who've come to join us for periods of time who've got the academics down of understanding organizational behavior and psychology and all that stuff, but they don't understand the fabric of allowing it to wrap around you. When we're trying to find the right fit for a person coming in, that's part of the challenge. Is I can hear you got a degree, I can hear you got great skill sets, you understand the model. Can you get behind the fabric? Can you get into the fabric of your clients? Can you become a fabric of who we are? I think we're basically a pretty happy family. Do we have disrupt? You bet we do. Do all of us get along perfectly? No, we don't. Have there been times I've been mad at Brad? Absolutely. There's been times I've been mad at Susan? Yes. Has she been disappointed with me? Oh, absolutely she has. No. Does it mean we get out of the car and we leave? We stay, we work it through, we work out, we understand where each other is a little bit better. But that's what makes us who we are.
The hope is that every person can find the reason they're on the earth. My language around that is God-given gifts. My mission, if it's helpful, would be to use my God-given gifts in the service of as many people as I possibly can. And then I die. So is it a calling? The answer is yeah. The calling is the gifts. So it's having an understanding of what those are and put them in service of people. And
the right questions, pushing the right buttons, and not being afraid to push them. Most people, as I say, get to this line, they think it's line of demarcation, won't go any further. It's the wrong line most places. And by the way, it's the line you must cross. And if you cross it effectively and get by that, opens up whole new horizons. I've got a client who literally had me interview his prospective wife because we do psychological profiling interviewing, asking if she's married. I said, that's not the way you do that, Bob. But I interviewed her. I sat down with him and with her, and we had a dinner. And I came away and I said, Bob, this is probably not right for you. I mean, I'm straight. If anything, I'm just too honest. And I explained why. He ignored the advice and got married and had a very, very, very painful divorce 2 years later.
There's a colleague one time, he was really artistic, and he said, hey, can I show you an art piece I'm working on? I said, of course. He said, it's 4 pieces. So he brings in the first piece, and it's a 2x3 piece of wood that is shiny and veneered. Leans it against my desk. Goes out of the room, comes back in, brings in the second one. It's that same piece of wood, only the corner's a little mashed and there's some like scratches on it. With piece number 3. It's a replica of that one, only this one is mangled. It has been shot with a shotgun. There's like burnt on one side, barbed wire is ran through it. The final piece. It's a replica of that one with a veneer, brand new shiny board bolted to the front of it. And he says it's a human's life. That we start out pretty varnished and pretty unscathed. And as we go through life, we encounter a lot and we build up a lot of scars on us. Yet as adults, we know and perceive that the societally appropriate thing to do is project the veneer. And it's very few that we actually let see all of those pieces. And I think in our line of work, we cannot be successful unless you show us the barbed wire and the bruises and the burns. I mean, that's the stuff that allows us to then optimize, helps us really get in.
Look at Hollywood. What does it invite little girls to want to be? It invites people to want to compare themselves to others. That's not a recipe for happiness. Look at what the news does, right or left? CNN or Fox, pick it. Go ahead. What are they and how do they invite you to think? So people have learned to not think. I'm much more interested and concerned with helping people think and how to think differently. And that's the premise of our business, by the way. See, do, get. You keep doing what you're doing, you'll keep getting what you're getting. So by definition, do you have the intellectual integrity to be able to admit that you're not getting what you want? And if you have the, quote, intellectual integrity, which by definition means are you straight with yourself, to say that I'm not getting what I want, then good. Let's start there. And the only way to get a new behavior, which is the see, do, get, the do, the only way to get a new do, which is a new behavior to get you a new outcome, is to have a new way of looking at it, and that's the see. And so we are in the see business in order to help people and companies get better results.
I have not seen anything more valuable to people than them being acknowledged. So I used to do this exercise, take a cardboard tube, and so you put two heads in, I put my head in, you put your head in, ask the question, how many faces? And so much of the time, a person will say two. And if there's two faces, then you're aware of yourself and you're going to be worried about what they're seeing. If you see them and that's all that there is, you'll see everything you need to see.
This morning, before this filming, I had a debrief that I was doing with a client, and they were going to take a pass on an internal client. She was disliked by many people in the company. I said, what would happen if you had a conversation with this person? She's been a 7-year employee, and she does a lot of things right. By being frank with her about what the deal breakers are that will prevent her from getting this job. And I will do it off the clock. I will help you off the clock. And then let's give her targets in terms of things that she can do that will change her behavior so that the organization will be excited if they give her this opportunity for this promotion. Whether or not this individual will choose to accept the gift, to grow and be vulnerable, which is part of the issue that she's going to need to face, will be up to her. But we've actually really helped redesign her destiny if she chooses to accept it. Well, that's what development is. Opening the doors for people to get out of their own way and do it in a supportive way that helps them feel like they're not broken. That's cool.
My language with my clients often is, why do you give your puppet strings so freely to people? It's like you're walking around and handing out puppet strings. And as their undone work happens, it pulls on you and you allow it. So you've just given so much power over your life to those individuals. Man. So my counsel is always just be a good guardian of who you give those strings to.
I talked my poor wife into making dinner. And what we did is we lived in Manhattan Beach at a time, and we could fit 10 people at our table. And so I invited 9 clients. They had to be the most senior person in the client system. Did what I call an executive forum. We started at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at my office. Then about 6, we go home, have cocktails and dinner. You had to be a client. This was not about selling anything, number 1. Number 2, you also had to bring an issue. And people got to know each other. They'd follow up what happened before. Fascinating. People got really deep in these issues and unbelievably valuable. There's something about having people come into your living room. And Connie would set an unbelievable table. One point we had a beach scene. You had ants on the table, literally. They were little plastic ants. You had sand on the table. And she'd always create a theme. People loved my wife. I mean, and she loved them first. And so it was a very interesting combination. The firm would not be alive today, I'm convinced, if my wife had not been as good as she was and so helpful and supportive. Those executive forums really brought out so much in terms of caring, in terms of feelings, in terms of emotions. Help people realize they weren't alone. Because it really does get pretty lonely at the top in organizations. Yeah.
Brad was very, very good about making sure we did things that were not work-related. First Christmas with Brad, I gave him shirts, good Brooks Brothers, but they were monogrammed in ACH, in AF, in POW, and in FUN.
We used to have a huge Christmas party every year. We'd have a black tie affair. You'd come in tuxedos and a woman would dress up very, very well. Great scotch and good food. But you're standing there one leg with a drink in your hand trying to figure out who you're going to talk to other than your spouse. And so we'd have a game. You walk in and your name tag, you have a different colored dot. You had to find people with your dots and they were your team. And people would get very, very competitive. One year we had part of a high school equivalency test. You had to see if you got the right answers. And there was a woman who actually started an accounting firm who at the time was probably 75 years old. So her team up made him finish it. It was hilarious.
Dr. Brad Spencer, we could speak for days about his profound knowledge and his depth in our field. Brad has done so much to help people, and nobody will ever know about it because he doesn't speak about himself. But he's created holidays and Christmases for families that had nothing, children that otherwise would have no toys under the tree. He has paid for education for people. That's the legacy of Brad Spencer.
I have a book that's like this, and it's got a little piece of tape across it, and it's titled Secret Spells. My book of spells. And it is just the things that you guys say on a recurring basis that you just can't find anywhere. It just doesn't exist. It's this wisdom that you bring from your years of experience that is genuinely appreciated.
I think if we had a brand, it would be leadership made simple, leading change made simple, how to communicate with the world made simple, something that's possible. So I don't know how we do that. We just seem to have a magic.
What Spencer Shank Capers does, SSCA, is we get people out of their head and connecting their heart. That's where life occurs. That's where leadership occurs, is getting them out of their head. And people are taught in business, get in your head. Well, when people are in their head, they're not living, they're not breathing, they're not experiencing the glory of leading people. Businesses don't even exist without people. And that's what we get people to do, but you cannot do it in your head. And that's the gift, that's part of the magic.
The integrity of this firm in supporting each other and being there for each other is a huge piece of our magic. Another piece is we've got really great education models. The number one comment we get from people who go through our education products is, where was this 20 years ago in my career? It would have changed it. It's that profound. So you got a really good product, right? That's number two of the magic. Number three, magic is look beyond the academics of what you're doing. It's looking to really understand these human beings that we call CEOs or presidents or general managers and see them as whole human beings. Spiritually, physically, mentally, you have to see them as whole people. If you see them only as a client from a business standpoint, you miss it.
If you ask our clients, which we did, to sort of archetype us, we get three. They call us a sage, an explorer, and a magician. Because of the wisdom and guidance, the willingness to take them to places they hadn't been before, and somehow doing it with magic because they don't know how it was done and where it came from. If you take Tom's a great example of this. And if you ask Tom about his journey in his life, and part of his ability to be a magician also comes from the incredible models that we have, and comes from his willingness to extend grace to himself and others, and comes from his willingness to trust himself and to have courage, and from Brad's ability to be direct, and from Susan's ability to hold standards to an incredible level and have this earnestness in what she does that's unparalleled. It's that amalgam, it's the alchemy for me of all of those things. There is no singular element. So as we transition in this firm, as we bring in new people and old people leave, I think the important part is to make sure that we've, the right ingredients that make the brew what it is. Because in the absence of all of those discrete pieces, the collective won't be as effective. And that's where the fear exists. Because what if I don't have a bottle of Eye of Newt that we need in order to make that magic present?
I think one of the reasons people hire us is we love what we do, and it shows. And I think that passion has to come through. If it doesn't, then you'll be less successful. And you don't manufacture it. Be passionate. Don't play at it. Don't act at it. Find what you love and do it really well.
The thing, Brad, that I think I hear more consistently, without doubt, is the fact that you will deliver news and put it on the table and just be very straight and very direct and very honest and forthright. And people find that refreshing.
Firm has impacted my life multiple ways. Professionally, it's a long list. The greatest impact this firm has had, though, is on me personally. I encountered a bump a couple of years ago with parenting. I ran into a difficult reality with my oldest son. And my wife and I found ourselves a bit adrift on what we needed to do. And I experienced firsthand, I think, what our clients experience. Tom, Brad, everyone, Stephanie, Dan, and Susan, all of them, gave us not just support in, words of encouragement, but direct counsel on how to navigate through a really hard time. My son struggled with depression and suicide attempts. And you can imagine the ripple that was on us. And the wisdom, the calm, the support, the encouragement, emails, one-on-one conversations, a willingness to meet and guide from this group. It's no doubt, no wonder why the relationships that we build with our clients are as they are. Because if any people experienced half of what I experienced, you'd be forever indebted to them.
If there was no Brad Spencer, there would be no Red Bucket. My life would have taken a completely different turn. And without Brad, without the lifestyle that he has afforded me, the opportunity to do this work I love and have learned from, I wouldn't be rescuing horses.
But Brad wrote me a note, and I think we all had to do something like that. It was a part of the assignment, and he wrote a note. And in the note it said, "I want to be your friend."
It was a place where you knew you didn't have to worry about whether or not people had your back. And you didn't have to worry if people would not tell you the truth. And you knew that sometimes what they were saying was a function of just being pissed off or frustrated or whatever, but that you could count on there will be a moment after that. And, Tom and Brad tell the story about, I'm still in the car. I felt I'm wanted in this car.
They really cut the crap out. Let's just be ourselves. Don't act like you're someone else. We're ourselves. The good, the bad, the ugly of it, though, by the way. And it's like sometimes we shake our heads at each other and laugh at our flaws, and yet it's a part of us. In any family, you have your dysfunctions. It's like to be the family and just accept that part is so unique. So unique. It's like we can get naked together. Who do you do that with besides family?
We just laid my mom to rest in December. Her memorial service, which everyone from Spencer Shank came to and was in the front row almost, it was very touching to me, was a tribute to all that she had done. And I thought, have I made a difference? And then I looked in the audience and I saw these people that I worked with for 20 years who were there out of respect for my mom, but I told them today, out of respect for me is how I took that also. And I thank them for being a part of that.
Being there is a way of helping him shoulder the pain. We get to put our arms around each other, and that's what makes the difference in how we get through this world and how we really show support for people is help take on their pain. And you have to show up in order to do that.
It was absolutely welcomed. And why? I have a relationship with these people. I walked today into the conference room and I walked in and sat down in a chair. And Dan looked at me and said, nobody has sat in that chair for the last 8 years. And yet you went right back to your chair. It's like, yes, last week I was here and it was 8 years ago.
In making this film, we had an incredible loss of Mike Alex, who was our office manager for 15 years. Mike had cancer, colon cancer, and it metastasized very quickly. And, we lost him. And in true Spencer Shank Capers form, we all sat front row and center to say goodbye and honor him. And there were some remarkable things that the firm did in Mike's memory. People can talk about family, but that's really what family is.
Gratitude is a very interesting emotion. I think it was Socrates observed, gratitude is the most powerful emotion of all, because when you're feeling gratitude, you can't feel other emotions like anger, upset, etc.
The most important element of any culture is the language. Within organizations, a strong culture also has a strong language, and part of our language is the language of gratitude.
I don't imagine there's anybody in the firm that's not remarkably grateful. And we seem to have a strongly forgiving nature. We always make mistakes with each other and cross the line with each other and do something stupid. And we seem to have forgiveness now. I don't know how we did that. But.
Happy birthday, dear Brad. Happy birthday to you.
This one, go ahead and make a good wish.
But come on.
Brad and I have decided that, and the firm has decided, that we want to have it go on after us. So that's the legacy. Brad and I would like to have a place to hang our hats, in a decade.
I'm hopeful that the legacy members of Spencer Shank Capers and Associates, and Spencer Shank Capers and whatever becomes Associates, will sometime make a mark that doesn't disappear.
How many workshops, how many clients have we had the opportunity to impact That's the legacy of SSCA. That's incredible. And it comes with an obligation. It comes with an obligation. We can't just show up and say that we do it. We actually have to do it and show up.
I think that we must preserve the magic of the firm, that uniqueness that we have. And I so respect Tom and Brad for what they've put in and their vision. I do not want that to die. And I think that Sean would agree with me. So to preserve that magic and that uniqueness, continuing to find those rare people who will take this daunting situation on and have the same passion and uniqueness to bring to the table is something that Sean and I must carry on.
We are all word of mouth. So the reality is our reputation always precedes us. So we better be good at what we're doing, because the way in which we get our clients is someone saying, you two are worthy of each other. Yeah. You need to know each other. I think we also have a challenging reality of the evolving state of affairs in the world of millennial generations and technology. And if there's a 28-year-old CEO of a startup somewhere that's looking for us and they find us through a technology space, if that is not reflective of time with us, one-on-one, then we may never get them. I do feel that we have to maintain relevancy in a digital world, in a technological space, so that our future clients look at it and perceive reputable, present, current, and then we get to connect with them. And then when we connect with them, we're probably going to be saying the stuff that Tom and Brad taught us years ago.
Where do I hope the firm will be in 10 years, 20 years? I would say fully enriching for the people who are there and they're making the money they want to make. Because I know that if they're there, they'll be making a difference in the world. Don't forget, Spencer Shank Capers has worked really hard at being the best kept secret in town. And I expect, even when it's not us, that they'll continue to be the best kept secret. I just think that's in the DNA.
I think one of the things I do regularly is just laugh at myself and laugh with others at themselves. And we just take ourselves way, way, way too darn seriously.